I'm not wearing a watch today. There's an empty space on my wrist because I'm desperately looking forward to receiving my new Omega Speedmaster 57 limited edition. And I think that, I look at a piece like that, and I think, what a spectacular re-edition of a watch that, the expectation is so legitimately high because it's such an important piece in the history that any brand that decided they were going to recreate something like that would almost be setting themselves up to fail, because realistically it would be such a challenge to equal something that the whole collecting community can get around and say, oh yeah, this is a great re-edition. And they've done it, without question. The Railmaster, the Seamaster and the Speedmaster as individual limited editions have just been spectacular successes. So I think the vintage market is certainly inspiring a lot of things. I think that it will depend on each brand, how far they want to sort of go back into their core history and how well they think they're able to re-execute. But I'm aware of a number of projects going on with other companies where they're clearly massively inspiring themselves from pieces in their museums and from their history to bring out new watches. So I think that's only going to carry on more and more, up to a point.
I think collectors, there's always a desire for history as well. It sort of gives them individualism. It shows their knowledge and appreciation of brands. If they can sort of acquire a watch that's a re-edition, perhaps more affordable than the original, but they can still, it's a talking point, they can wear it and talk about the brand's history. So I think, it's a very clever tool for the brands to use and sort of focus on clients' individualism, to, really sell their pieces.
Yeah, I always have a slight problem with exact copies or very similar copies, just because I always think that we should be moving forwards rather than just looking backwards. I think the re-editions have their place, but when they're overtaking the new pieces that are being designed and created, then I think that's a bit of a shame. I think what's round the corner, I wish we had that crystal ball. That's always been the problem. I think we'd all be very rich.
I guess the key is, I think the absolute sort of key is making it a limited edition. So you make it so that no matter, it's not just a new line piece. It has to be specific to a small number of pieces, so that it does acquire a certain kind of cachet before it comes out. And also, I think it's a good way to engage with young collectors. I really think that that's something that shouldn't be undervalued. It's tough sometimes to sort of tell people all about these incredible watches and to see them at Philips and to sort of share them on Instagram and say, okay, there's this £65,000 Speedmaster.
Philips, Bonhams and Sotheby's.
And sorry, forgive me, Philips, Bonhams and Sotheby's. And sorry, that's very true, I apologise. And a collected man. But I think it's a very good way to get people to allow them to sort of feel like they can at least connect in some way, because I think that's the hardest thing. It's not that hard after a while to seem rarefied and elite and to be offering the best pieces. But if then you're almost just baiting a certain part of the community by not having anything that they can reach. And I think as a way to engage with a younger demographic, as a way to make something seem a little bit more approachable and to encourage younger collectors who realistically are not going to be able to afford anything for a long time of any sort of real provenance, it's a smart way, as long as it's a limited edition, and as long as it's not done in a way to suggest that in any way it takes away from, but only enhances the prestigiousness of the original execution, then I think there's no harm in it. I think you're right, if it's produced in vast volumes and it's seen to be almost just a cheap rip-off that is there to just sell watches for the sake of it, then people are going to see through that, and if anything, that's going to detract from the value of the original. I mean, I'm not going to say who, but I think certain pieces recently have done that. But if it's done in limited amounts and it's well done, then personally I just think it's a great. And of course I'm extremely biased because I'm looking forward to getting one. So I can't. But I do take your point.
And that's limited to how many pieces?
I think it's 3,557, which is a big number, but for Omega is a tiny number.
It's a teeny tiny number when you multiply it by the world. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I should imagine there's a waiting list already.
Yeah, it's
Waiting patiently.
a bit of a waiting list, but I think it's all in the execution, the delivery, not necessarily in the concept itself. Yeah. And I think it's easily open to abuse. I just think it really depends on the way that the brand thinks about it and what they want to get from it, that determines whether or not it's a good thing or a bad thing in really plain terms. Mm-hmm. But I know what you mean.
And I think there is also the aspect that it does help, as you say, the vintage market. Like anything, just building awareness that there are old watches that are attractive and interesting, and certainly with things like Omega and Rolex slightly playing on the 007 aspect of things. I think it has its place, but it needs to be measured, as you say. It's not something that can be and also can't be the answer to their marketing problems. It's an addition. So yes, from that point of view, I agree with you. Yeah. Mm-hmm.